On Hour One, celebrating Deaf Awareness Week, see here.
Welcome to our second chat show. Well, as you can see, someone took a little notice of my complaint last time. They made a brave attempt at publicity, but if that's all they can do, they can forget it. Oh, I've got a joke for you, and it's a good one for Deaf Awareness Week, right? Now, there was a man and a woman who met, and they hadn't seen each other for a very long time. They had a great chat, and when they'd finished, the man said, "Why don't you come round to my place sometime for coffee?" She said, "Love to, give me your address." So he wrote it down and off they went. Sometime later, she drove and arrived at the address in the street, but she didn't have the number of his house, and it was a big block of flats, and she didn't know which one to go to. How was she going to find out? So she thought about it and decided what she would do would be just scream, "Ah!" And all the lights came on except one, and then she knew which flat to go to, didn't she? Joking apart, publicity, promotion, awareness are important. They're very important. That's why we're celebrating the end of Deaf Awareness Week today. Well, we aren't celebrating the end of it. You know what I mean. We're celebrating its existence. And particularly its theme this year, of making the invisible visible. All my guests today will have something to offer on that theme. For my first guest, it's been a very busy few months. Not only has he been heavily involved in Deaf Awareness Week, but he was very visible in Blackpool at the British Deaf Association conference. He is, in fact, the first ever democratically elected chairman of the BDA. And it's Murray Holmes. Well, Murray, you comfortable there? Yes, fine, thank you. Now, how do you feel? I mean, you must have settled down now since you were appointed chairman of the BDA. Well, I'm just recovering from the shock, actually. And it started in August. It was very quiet. And in September, it got extremely busy, and I'm even busier now than I've ever been. And, you know, not many people understand what it's like, so I've got a lot to do. Okay, now you obviously are very pleased with the Blackpool conference, aren't you? Yes, I think so. I think there were a lot of positive things happened in Blackpool.
But the European conference...
The European Conference on Human Rights was a great success, I think. Very, very positive resolutions came from that. The BDA Members Conference, too, was the first ever time when we had one member, one vote. And I was amazed to see that there were so many members there in touch with what was happening. We used to have a delegates conference, and so many members who'd never dreamed of speaking before did get up and say something. But having said that, there were also one or two negative aspects too. I understand there were approximately 1,000 deaf people there in Blackpool, but we only sold 400 tickets. Maybe it was the cost of the tickets, or the members didn't like the program, or weren't attracted to it, or interested in the talks and lectures and so on. So I think we need to think about that before next time. Now, about yourself, Murray. Jock Young, he's left, he's not chairman anymore. He's going to be a pretty hard act to follow, I think. Now, you're a new chairman. You obviously want to make some changes, develop things, Anything to say in that area? Do you have any plans to make any changes already? Well, yes. Jock is a very difficult act to follow. You know, he was the first deaf chairman of the BDA. There was no one who was deaf before him. And he's done a terrific job. He's had a very positive attitude. We've got a lot of deaf people working in the BDA now. And yes, I'm going to find it very difficult to follow Jock. But maybe in some ways, my style will be different, I think. I mean, you know, now we have one member, one vote in the BDA. So I'm trying to do as much as I can to involve the grassroots membership in our work. And I'm thinking about that for the future. Well, yes, that is important. Now, you know that on See Here, we get a great deal of correspondence with people in America. We've had a lot of correspondence with the Silent Network in America, TV for the Deaf. They have their own channel now with other disability groups, which is very powerful. It's a very strong image, promoting the image of people with disabilities, including deafness. Now, that's a very powerful group. They're improving services for deaf people and other groups on television. Does the BDA feel that maybe something should happen here on similar lines, so you can join with other disabilities and have therefore a more powerful voice? Is the BDA thinking along those lines at all? Well, I feel that it would be a good thing to have an organization for people with disabilities, a much stronger voice, as you say. You can make more demands on the media to provide more in the way of services for all people with disabilities, just as they do in America, obviously including the deaf. But again, in America, they have a law on their side, don't they? They have the ADL, that act. So it's much easier for them than it is for us. And I hope that one day we can get a similar piece of legislation passed here. That would help. Well, tell me about your experience when you went to the United Nations. I heard that something really tremendous had happened at the UN in the States. Yes, I went to the UN, to the General Assembly just 2 weeks ago. And when I got there, it was quite a shock. I was taken into a hotel and I registered. Somebody spoke to me. I said, well, I'm deaf. And they said, oh, well, hang on a moment. And they brought me, or rather gave me a special room. They took me into this room and they had flashing light doorbell for the room. There was a text telephone in there. There was a TV with captions there. And it was absolutely fantastic. I could phone room service and order my own whiskey. I didn't have to go downstairs to the bar and get it. It was absolutely marvellous. But did you find an interpreter in your wardrobe? Unfortunately not, no. But maybe next time. Maybe next time, yes. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much, Murray. Thank you. Thanks again, Murray. Now, a question for our audience, both at home and here in the studio. We're about to show you a logo, a symbol of a large national event. Any idea what it is? Does anyone know what that is? Anybody know? Yes, sir, you. I think it's sport, isn't it? Something to do with sport?
Deaf people being
Anybody
free.
else? Anybody else? Any idea what it is? I think it's people feeling angry, deaf people, and being oppressed by hearing people and feeling really angry about it. Well, actually, that illustration by Graham Barker was commissioned by BT, who sponsored the Young Deaf Achiever of the Year competition. It's been running for 5 years now, and we have here in the audience a few of the nominees from previous years. One winner and 2 regional finalists. Now, Matthew James, let me come to you first. Now, you won the competition in 1988, didn't you? Now, why did you enter? What were you hoping to achieve?
I did. A friend nominated me behind my back.
Well, a friend actually nominated me behind my back. It was a surprise. I came home one day and there was a letter asking if I could go to London and Princess Diana would be making a presentation. I felt really amazed. I was excited, obviously. I just didn't think I'd achieved anything because it was, you know, just something new. I was looking forward to it that day. So what did you actually achieve? What was it for? Well, at that time I was a student at university. And I'd been travelling. And I'd done various other things too. I mean, I'd become a diving instructor. You're a diving instructor? Yes, that's right. Well, you'd have to teach me sometime. Now, Fiona Davis, you've been on Sea here before, haven't you? Now, I know you're interested in photography and you have your own fashion business, your own shop. How are they both going?
Well, I'm sad to say the shop is closed now. I had to close it at the end of August due to the recession. There just wasn't the money available. But now, of course, my first love is photography. And I'm in my second year at the photography course.
So why be nominated? What have you achieved?
Well, many things, really. I think the important things were two things. First of all, I'd gone to Canada on an expedition, and we were filming disabled people out there. It was a survival film. And then the second thing, of course, was when I opened the shop.
Okay, now our third young deaf achiever is Graham Hicks. Now, as you can see, Graham is deaf with limited vision and gets all his information by touch, but he can communicate through speech. Hello, Graham. Can you tell me when you were nominated and what for? I was nominated by Sense and I think it was because I had been able to promote the needs of people with dual sensory disability and had been successful in starting my own business. I think that my disability is just one disability. You can't split it between deafness and blindness. They are interwoven. I feel it is a challenge because of the attitudes you come up against. Yes, good comments there. Thank you. Now back to you, Fiona. Do you feel that what you've achieved in your life has given you confidence?
Oh yes, in lots of ways. My confidence has certainly developed, especially because of the publicity. Had to be confident. There I was as a role model, so that was quite important. And it's made a lot more hearing people aware, especially the people I worked with in the shop And of course I met lots of customers, so it was important to them to come across as confident.
That's
I forgot
okay.
what I
What
was gonna
about you? Well, at first, yeah, I thought it was great, but then I started to realize what it meant. That achievement is getting something which isn't the same as hearing people, really. Because, I mean, hearing people can get a degree and you think, well, fine, well done. But for a deaf person to get a degree, it's much more difficult. It's much harder for them. I mean, you go to a university with all of those people and you're on your own. All the tutors are hearing. It really was a real struggle. And I think having done that, yes, I'm much more confident. So do any of you have any message that you'd like to give to young people who may well be nominated as Young Deaf Achievers? Anything to say? I think we need to try and get as much publicity as possible. The newspapers, the press actually don't say very much about it. I mean, they might get a photograph if you're lucky, and that's not good enough of the BIP. What we need to do is tell hearing people what the Young Deaf Achievers is actually all about. And I was looking for a job for a long time. And then as part of the Young Deaf Achievers, there was my CV. I put it onto my CV that I was a Young Deaf Achiever, and nobody asked me what it was. The reason is because they'd never heard of it, obviously. So it is important that you must get as much publicity as possible. Well, thank you all very much. Now, the nominations for this year's awards have now closed. We'll be reporting on the actual event and the winners later in the series. Now, in the last chat show, I was playing around with sound on my, or rather my producer's guitar. I actually get a lot of pleasure from music, even when the guitar's only got one string. Sometimes it's the vibrations, and sometimes the sounds themselves on my Walkman. Now, I know that hearing people often are surprised that deaf people should be interested in music. So we're now delighted to find that after all our efforts to make deaf pop videos with deaf artists, that a hearing artist, and a famous one at that, has now made a video in which there is not only sign language, but the singer herself is using sign language. Here's the video, and it's Sinead O'Connor.
You told me all the big things you had planned. It wasn't long till all your dreams came true. Success put me in second place with you. You have no time to love me anymore, since fame and fortune knocked upon our door. And I spend all my evenings all alone. Success has made a failure of our home. Happiness again. You no time to love me anymore. Since fate and fortune knocked upon our door, and I spend all my evenings all alone. Success has made a failure of our home. Success has made a failure of our home. I never changed. I never changed. Stop what you're saying. You're killing me. Am I not your good? 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 Am I not?
Well, there is absolutely no doubt that Sinead has done her bit to make the invisible visible. And so is my next guest. When we first met her some 10 years ago, she worked for the subtitling unit at the BBC. And now she makes and commissions the programs which other people subtitle. She's the first ever deaf program editor in any British TV company. She is Karina Marchant. Now, Karina, I remember last time, it was 10 years ago when we met. You were working as a subtitler, and now you're the editor of a program. I mean, how did you get such rapid promotion?
Well, when I first started, people saw a deaf person, and they didn't see that I was capable of doing what I wanted to do. I mean, the first day I arrived for the subtitling job, I thought I was actually going to be subtitling. But when I got there, they said, oh no, you can't subtitle, you're deaf, here's a typewriter. So I decided that I was going to subtitle, so I started subtitling during the evenings. And then they said, oh yes, you can be a subtitler, you can do it now. So I threw the typewriter in the bin and decided that I was never ever going to do what people told me to do. So when I went into program making, I started off doing a lot of research. And people said to me, you know, you can do research very well, but you know, it's going to be really difficult for you to go filming because you're going to have to be able to communicate with people. You're going to have to be able to hear the sound recording. You're going to have to be able to edit. Well, how are you going to do it? You're deaf. So then nobody ever thought that, you know, if I had an interpreter, you know, perhaps things would be possible. So anyway, there were a few friends who thought, producers, directors, who were really, really, really supportive. And with them, I got what I got.
Fantastic, really. And I think it would be an amazing feat for a hearing person to have got that far in 10 years, let alone someone who was deaf. So really, it's absolutely fantastic. But do you feel that you are a great role model then, in what you've done?
I don't think I've ever really seen myself as a role model. I've always seen myself as a program maker, and that I feel I'll always be judged by the programs I make. And if people see the programs and they like them and they say, a deaf person made them and I want to do the same, that's really great.
Now, can you explain briefly the sort of people who work with you in the program? What kind of people are they?
Well, our programme From the Edge is very unique because it's funded by the European Social Fund, and that means that people who've been long-term unemployed, who are disabled, can apply to work in the unit, and they come on an 18-month training course, and we train them not just as programme directors, but we also train people how to use cameras,
how to do sound recording, because there's nothing so empowering if you're a deaf person as doing your own sound recording. The myths and the fears go, and after all, we got deaf sound recordists in America. And then at the end of the 18 months, the trainees apply for jobs in the television industry. And obviously it's a very difficult industry to get a job in now. But because they can work sound equipment, camera equipment, editing equipment, they've got a better chance than most program makers who don't learn that.
Now, your program's predecessor was 1 in 4. Now it's become something else and has changed. It's subtitled and interpreted. What is, what has been the big change you've made?
From the Edge is a very hard-line political program. It's very uncompromising. I think The Independent called it like lava bubbling under concrete, and it shows the anger of disabled people who've been denied full civil rights in society. It's a program that looks at why we don't get access and rights. Last week, for Deaf Awareness Week, we've got a story about 2 deaf people who've been denied access to jury service. And so it's a very angry program. It's also a program that reclaims for deaf people their own language on screen, because we have deaf on-screen interpreters doing BSL, and I think that's very important to show that deaf people are not just the recipients of interpreting, they can also be the interpreters.
Okay, now can you tell me what's the difference between From the Edge and See Here, do you think? What's the biggest difference?
I think, fortunately, the interpreter is one of the differences, because the interpreter is smaller, and that's because we have a number of visually impaired people who watch the programme, and they need as large a screen as possible in order to get enjoyment from the programme. So the interpreter becomes smaller. I think also it integrates the deaf community within the disabled community. We see it as one large community with anti-discrimination legislation and that campaign in common. We don't see the deaf as a linguistic minority outside the disabled community. I think See Here feels that too.
Yes, that's right. Well, I hope your programme goes on from success to success. We've now got From the Edge and we've got See Here. Maybe we'll have more programmes in the future, who knows. Thank you for coming, Karina. Thank you. Now, we're going to make a few more audience shows in December. They'll probably be debates or question time programmes. They'll be recorded on Saturday, December the 12th, here in London. If you'd like tickets to attend, we'd be glad to send you some. And it's all free. Write to us at the See Here address, which is coming up, and let us know how many tickets you need. We can't accept requests from groups, unfortunately, so it'll be a maximum of 4 tickets per application. Well, that's all for this week. See you next Sunday. Bye-bye.